ESPN, the world leader in motorsports, presents Speed World. You're looking at the beautiful Mid-Ohio racetrack, somewhat soggier than usual today. 15 turns, 2.4 miles in length, where we're going to be holding round 10 of the Sports Car Club of America's Escort Trans Am Championship this afternoon. Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Arute, and working with me this afternoon is a man that has some first-hand knowledge about the weather, and in fact, it should play a major factor in the outcome of today's race. Johnny Rutherford, you just came out of a race car. You've got some first-hand experience. What's a driver going to have to do to compensate for this rain?
Well, I think probably the first thing you do is park your brain in the toolbox, because that would help very much. It's very slippery out there. There are virtual rivers across the racetrack in a couple of places, and when the cars cut across a corner, they drag a lot of mud and rock across the racetrack, which makes it doubly tough. So I think the guy that wins today is just going to have to use his head, stay out of trouble, and drive a very straight, careful race if he can do that.
There's another story that will certainly come into play today, and that's the emergence of a European team doing battle with the Americans, and the weather should help them. But for more on that, let's check in with Gary Lee. Gary?
Thank you, Jack. Johnny, good afternoon. The Audi team has won 6 of 9 Trans Am races this season. In fact, they've done everything but clinch the manufacturer's title in their first year, but it's not a happy bunch. In an effort to equate the Trans Am competition, SCCA has added 200 pounds of weight, a restrictor on the turbo that effectively reduces the horsepower by 10%, and they made the Audis go to smaller tires. Audi says, well, we may not come back next year. Basically, we have the heaviest car and the smallest engine at 2.1 liters. But with all the restrictions, there is one advantage. On a wet track, they have all-wheel drive, and that could put them again in victory lane. Also covering the pit area, our colleague Larry Newber.
If any car has challenged that Audi supremacy in 1988, it's been this V6 Oldsmobile. Several times this year, although it's not among those non-Audi winners, this has been the fastest car on the racetrack. This weekend at Mid-Ohio, Irv Hare has qualified on the pole. He comes to Mid-Ohio having finished second in this race in drier conditions last year and also ranked second in points. He says the only thing that has kept him from victory lane so far this season, which would be his first victory lane in Trans Am racing, has been luck. Well, if bad weather smiles on anybody, it's the pole setter. So maybe Irv Hare's luck is beginning to change. For more on the weather, here's Jack and Johnny.
And let's take a look at that weather, because as we said, it certainly will play a key role in this afternoon's outcome. 70 degrees. They say the skies are overcast, but it must be about a humidity factor of about 100% because the rain is coming down, Johnny.
It is incredible.
And it's certainly going to play a key role, as you said, in the open, but more important than that, it makes this track very difficult as well. This is a tough track in the dry, let alone in the wet. Let's take a look at this racetrack. 2.4 miles of twisting, turning, 9 right-hand and 6 left-hand turns. And the width, Johnny, that's the critical area, isn't it?
It really is, Jackie, because this width is quite narrow for a car as fast as the speeds can be attained here. So it makes it doubly tough when it gets wet like this.
There are no planned pit stops. If anybody comes into the pit, you pretty much can take yourself right out of the race. Let's give you a quick tour around Mid-Ohio, because it is a difficult place. The quick, tight first turn is a left-hand turn, one of the few that you really have to get a chance to maybe pass in.
Yes, and it is wet, so that makes it doubly tough because there's nothing but wide open spaces off of there, and it's wet grass and you can slide forever. Down a straightaway heading for the keyhole, they call it, and there's a kink there, which is very quick as well, and you enter it fast up to the keyhole. The keyhole is going to be very slippery because guys get into the dirt on the inside and you slide off. Down the long back straightaway, there are some puddles there you can hydroplane into what is called Madness. The turn at the end of the back straightaway, on around through the rest of the part of the course is very twisty and turny and it's wet, so it's going to be a lot of slide-offs, I'm sure. Around to the back stretch, what we call the back stretch, under the bridge back there, there's a lot of water standing in there, and at the top of that turn, virtual river coming in. Around to the carousel, they call it, which is the tight right-hander, and it's a little bit off camber. It is very slippery today, so in fact you could get off and slide forever in the grass and back to the pit straight and down to turn 1 again.
Kind of appropriate to call a turn a carousel today, because it certainly could be a carnival of speed and altercations all afternoon. Now, the Escort Trans Am Championship today is brought to you by Budweiser, proud sponsor of the 1988 U.S. Olympic team. This Bud's for you. And by Lincoln, what a luxury car should be. We'll be back with the starting lineup for today's Sports Car Club of America Escort Trans Am Championship round right after these messages. Don't go away. Back in Mid-Ohio, I'm Jack Arute along with Johnny Rutherford, Larry Newber, and Gary Lee, and we are just about ready to get underway with today's Trans Am Championship round number 10. A field of 38 cars have addressed themselves to pit lane. They've all fired. They're underway, working down in the Madness section of the racetrack. And let's take a look at the starting grid. First row, Irv Hare and Darren Brassfield. And on the second row, Scott Pruitt. Hot off a win at Lime Rock Park almost 3 weeks ago. An infrequent Trans Am competitor starts in the outside of that second row, and that's Jack Baldwin. And Johnny, he's one tough competitor out here in the stock car.
Yes, he is.
Running in the third row, Hans Stuck and Hurley Haywood, the team Audis side by side. The fourth row, Paul Newman and Jim Derhaag. Newman, no stranger to the Hollywood set, also no stranger to road racing. Fifth row is Les Lindley and Lynn St. James. Paul Gentazzoli, the winner of the Long Beach race earlier this year. Scott Sharp making only a second start in SCCA Trans Am competition. That's at the rows 7 and 8. We've got Mike Ciasuli, R.K. Smith, Bruce Nesbitt, and Jerry Clinton. The 9th and 10th row bring Deborah Gregg, Jerry Kuhn, Craig Schaefer, and Donald Sack to post positions. 11th and 12th row are Philip Bartlett, Peter Demon, Danny May, and Jeff Jones. The 13th and 14th row find Dan Fury, Paul Hetherington, Frank Herchick, and David Seif. 15th and 16th row bring Joseph Malloy, Kerry Hitt, Tim Taylor, and Phil Kalusha. To the post positions here, R.J. Valentine, Chris Neifel, one of the tallest competitors in SCCA competition in the 17th row. 18th row is Rick Titman, and Bruce Jenner from Denver, not Colorado, North Carolina, brings up row 18. And running shotgun on the field in car number 32, Jerry Dunbar. So that's the field that will present themselves to the start-finish line. Now, one thing, Johnny, that they do here a little bit different on the start is they don't start at the start-finish. They start it down the backstretch.
Yes, it's a little bit confusing, but in the interest of safety, it's much better because it's a more wide-open area. You still would have cars coming around the carousel and out to the start-finish line at the original start-finish line. Here we see them coming up the backstretch, heading for that green flag to start this race. You can see the water behind the cars. There's a lot of it out there.
Up to full song they come. You see the green flag has been displayed, and lo and behold, the first thing that greets you at the end of the backstretch is an area called Madness. On the break, two cars do spin. Your lead contingent. Hare is around. He gets back underway.
Brassfield cannot get going because of the other cars coming up there. There's another car off, obviously getting out to miss, but it's very slippery. You can see how shiny it is down to the inside. Well, that's the normal groove where they run, so it's been polished. You want to be outside where this black car is going through now because it is still gritty out there, and you can get better traction. We were doing that during the race a while ago, and it was something. They're the two four-wheel drive Audis, which should fare well today here.
Somewhat prophetic, as we said, with four-wheel drive, that they would do much better in the wet. It seems to be the case as they prepare to exit turn number 11, go to 13, 14, and finally to the 15th turn. Number 14 is your leader. That's Hans Stuck out of East Germany, a sometime former Formula One competitor. He's run an IMSA Camel GT competition, and he's making just a shambles out of this race in the early going. Let's go back now and take a look at the spin. You've got Brassfield on the outside.
Yes, you can see he was in the proper position out there on that grayer part. The other car was low. Irv Hare was inside. He pushed the front end and picked up Brassfield, and it was unfortunate.
Johnny, it looked almost as if Hare just got in a little too hot into the corner and started to skid towards the outside.
At those speeds, it doesn't make any difference how hot you get into the pits because it's very slippery out there, and once you turn in, the car just will not turn.
A tough break for your pole sitter. Irv Hare presents his car on pit road. That Oldsmobile has been running stout of late. He sat on the pole for the second time this year.
You can see there he has a flat tire, so maybe they can just change the tire. He may have some damage, but at this point they'll change the tire and look at it and see. They're having
Larry Newber is there. Larry?
Well, Jack, they've gone to work to the left front of the car. You're exactly right. The tire came completely off the wheel. You know, Irv told us before the race began he was concerned about starting on the backstretch because the V6 doesn't work at its maximum output till the RPMs are up. He was very concerned about starting back there. He thought he was at a tremendous disadvantage over the V8s. I see no other damage. There's a little bit of tire rub and a little bit of dents around the left front wheel well, but there did not appear to be any permanent damage on that car. I think he should be able to race full speed the rest of the race.
Another driver that presented himself on pit road was the winner at Long Beach, Paul Gentazzoli. He was in and out very quickly. Meanwhile, up front, Stuck continues to manhandle the keyhole portion. And listen to the sounds, Johnny, as they go through the gearbox. You can actually hear the tires squeaking and getting a bite, all four wheels.
Yes, you can also hear that chirping that it's doing. That's the turbocharger having a little compressor stalled. Whenever you get it up to where it's really spinning and back out of it or make changes on it, it will chirp like that. So every time they make a gear change, every time you hear it chirp, they're making a gear change. And so that'll give you a clue as to how many times you have to shift gears around here.
Have you ever driven a four-wheel drive race car?
No, I never have, and I've always wanted to. You know, they were banned actually in IndyCar racing, but I understand it is something very different because you're getting grip all the way around, very much like it'd be driving your four-wheel drive in ice or snow or rainy weather. They're very good.
Looked as if in that area he carried the car just a little bit wider than he cared to, but I think you may have a little bit more of a margin for error with four-wheel drive than you would with just the rear wheel spinning.
Well, I'm not sure that would be the case because it still boils down to how hard you take it into the turn. But if you have the technique, you can see how wide he is there, utilizing the outside of the track where it is still very gritty and a lot of grip to be able to get going. And that's you know, there's one of the best road racers in the business, and you can watch his line, and that's the way to do it.
And he is beginning to lengthen his advantage over second place. His teammate Hurley Haywood of Point Verde, Florida. Pruitt runs in the third spot. Scott Pruitt with the Merkur, and then running right down through the area now is Hans Stuck, and it looks as if it's an effortless run thus far for Stuck in the Audi. And, you know, this is something not since 1979 has a European car maker won the Manufacturers' Championship in SCCA competition, and they are certainly going after it this year.
Done a marvelous job.
Well, the action has been somewhat soggy, somewhat hot, and somewhat heavy thus far in the Sports Car Club of America Escort race here at Mid-Ohio Racetrack. Your leader continues to be Hans Stuck. He's being trailed by Hurley Haywood. Scott Pruitt is in third, Jack Baldwin in fourth. Newman, you remember him? He's running in fifth. Don't go away, we'll be back. Back in Mid-Ohio, the fortunes of the race have changed. Not in the front where Hans Stuck continues to lead, but in the battle for second place. Your second place runner has presented his Audi on pit road. That, of course, is the Point Verde, Florida driver, Hurley Haywood. And, Johnny, that could be a portent of problems to come with our leader.
Well, it could, and it'll bear watching. But Hurley, we don't know what it was that he was in for, but Hans Stuck is, I think we have Larry Newber down in the pits. Maybe he can tell us what's going on.
Johnny, I saw the pass of Jack Baldwin, rather, on Scott Pruitt. Scott Pruitt was running up into the top five comfortably. And I was watching him carefully for a couple laps, and he kept slowing down. Finally, just a few minutes ago, while we were in break, Scott Pruitt came in. His problem is also one of a windshield wiper. This is something the guys are prepared for, but they really aren't accustomed to having function in a race. This is the second windshield wiper that has failed taking the lead out of the race. Now, those of you at home may say, well, what are these guys? You know, aren't they brave enough to run out here without a windshield wiper? Under normal conditions, yeah, if it was just a light mist, the wind would blow it off. But the rain is so hard out here, you absolutely have to have the windshield wiper. So Scott Pruitt has a long ways to go. Now, Gary Lee has been standing by up north of here, up near turn number 1, where the Audis are pitted, and they've had their problems, too, as you have outlined.
Well, Bob Tullius, you can talk about technology, but sometimes it is the little simple thing that can put you at least at the back of the pack. What was the problem again with Hurley?
Hurley lost his windshield wiper, and today's not a day to have that happen. But Hans is doing fine, and Hurley will manage all right. He has a capacity for rising to the occasion.
We've talked about the water on the track and also the mud now that's growing on the track as well. Have the drivers made any comment about general track condition?
No, they said it was running across the track in a couple of places, but nothing serious, and it appears as though it's they've been able to cope with it okay.
Now, most team managers or crew chiefs talk with only one driver. You're trying to communicate with both, which must really be a task.
Well, it's not so difficult today because Hans's radio quit on the false grid, so we're only talking to one guy.
So once again, minor problems that could have a major impact on the conclusion of this race here at Mid-Ohio.
Boy, just when you think, Johnny Rutherford, that everything's going your way, you lose a windshield wiper on your teammate, your radio doesn't work, but as you watch Hans Stuck circumnavigate this race course, so far, it seems to be going all his way. But directly behind him, well, that's actually Hurley Haywood. He's going to try and make up the time. But for Stuck, you know, he has a lot of experience in the rain, so maybe he anticipates things a little better than some of these drivers.
You know, it's still up to the crew, and he might have some input there, obviously, saying, let's make sure this works and that works. But there's one thing you cannot control. These cars do not have Newman's off into the catch trap there, obviously, and I don't think he's going to be getting right out of there anytime soon.
You named it. It almost looks like a sand trap at a golf course.
It's a sand trap, sand pit, as it were, so that we'll slow the cars down, obviously, as it has done Paul.
Under normal circumstances, he might be able to negotiate his way out of it, but with the mud that surrounds that sand pit and with the wet conditions, he's not stuck. He's just hung up.
Well, I think he's bottomed out there. We'll wait and see.
They've called for the hook.
Yeah, he's trying to. He says he can drive it, so let's see what happens if he can get it started. I haven't seen an exhaust blowing out of it.
You know, you talk about the Audis and for Hurley Haywood the frustrations today, but since he's been driving for Audi, they've had their share of frustrations as a team. Sports Car Club of America just a race ago instituted a 200-pound weight limit, a change in boost restrictions, and for Hurley Haywood, this has been a serious consideration. In fact, we asked him earlier just how tough it was to cope with the new rules.
They put the weight restrictions and the tire restrictions on us, and it really hurt us at Lime Rock. We're still coping with those penalties here, but we've had enough time to sort of figure out what to do with them at this race. And, so far the cars are fairly good. The nice thing about the all-wheel drive is it maintains its integrity for the whole race. So, if we can be close to Pruitt and Brassfield in qualifying, I think, after the race gets going, we'll catch up a little bit and we'll be able to race with them at the latter part of the race.
Boy, he talks about being close. They say close is only good in horseshoes and hand grenades, but they've been more than close to that.
Yes, it's one of those kind of days, I can guarantee you.
Now, the yellows come out. It's a full course caution, and it's for our buddy down on the backstretch near Madness, Paul Newman, and that'll be a big break for all the competitors because they've shuffled the deck behind your leader, Hans Stuck, and it's somewhat different than the last time we showed you. Stuck, of course, your leader, but moving into second place, and what a great run is Chris Neipel. Neipel has come from the back. He runs second. A tough guy from Marietta, Georgia, is in third. Jack Baldwin, Darren Brassfield, who spun just at the start of the first turn after the initiation of the green flag, has moved to fourth, and Mike Ciasuli has moved into that fifth position. Don't go away. We'll be back with more after this.
Hans Stuck continues to lead into yellow. The real problem here in the pit area is how we conduct business with two umbrellas at the same time with Bob Tullius. Bob, with all the restrictions being placed on you by SCCA, there has been some talk that you may not return with the Audi program next year. Audi may go to perhaps IMSA competition. Can you shed some light on those rumors?
Not really. There's always a consideration for doing other things, bigger, better things, and I'm certain that Audi is considering that. I don't think it has a lot to do with the rules, but I think it's just a matter of improving their stature, improving to a different audience and to a different, perhaps a different market, that Audis are real race cars, and they're worthwhile buying in the street.
And depending on where the Oldsmobiles finish this afternoon, this could wrap up the manufacturer's title for them.
Well, I'd have to look at the points and see where they finish, but it will be very close, and we'd have to have 27 points on them or 28 points on them going into Elkhart Lake, and I don't know whether we can accomplish that this afternoon or not, but it'll be very close.
But you should be able to sell some more cars come next week.
Well, we certainly hope to, and they deserve to. They're wonderful people to work for, and they're wonderful cars to drive. I drove one the other day here, by the way, and I'm looking forward to a possibility a little later in the season.
Well, Larry Newber has been standing down here getting wet as well, and he has some comments about your leader, Heinz Stuck.
Well, Gary, the Drivers' Championship is not nearly as much of a foregone conclusion as the Car Championship is. Hurley Haywood came in here leading Irv Hare by basically a second-place finish. But what about Hans Stuck? Does he still have a shot at it? Mathematically, he very much does. He has not run every one of the races in the Trans Am Series up till now. This happens to be, however, his fourth entered race in a row in which he has won. So if he could continue this winning streak and Haywood could continue to have a little bit of the bad luck that he's had here today, Hans Stuck has a real shot at this points championship. Maybe, Johnny and Jack.
Well, you talk about how well the Audis have performed. Let's take a look at those manufacturers' points because, as we alluded to, the Audi is in front by a considerable margin, Johnny, over Oldsmobile, Chevrolet, and Lincoln Mercury. And remember, as I told you, not in the 80s has a European manufacturer scored the Trans Am Championship, and that's a coveted trophy for manufacturers.
It really is, and especially for the Europeans to come over here and on our turf dominate like they have. And it's been a good effort, strong effort by Audi.
Well, you talk about Hans Stuck, and we alluded to the fact that he's entered just several races, but he's fairly victorious in them. At Cleveland, at Brainerd, at the Meadowlands, and looks like maybe we might be going back to green, and he might have a chance to try and score his 4th here today. He's led everything as you watch him come up through the gearbox and get ready for the display of the green flag as he comes to the start-finish stripe. He is flat back in the throttle one more time.
Oh, he's hooking them up. The car is phenomenal, and he is getting all there is out of it. He's doing a marvelous job.
One of the things, though, with the Germans, oh, there's Scott Pruitt. Pruitt off the dirt. He's had into the mud, actually. He's had a tough weekend, but, you know, he's going to be racking up more frequent flyer miles than most pilots for a major airline. He's back and forth this weekend to Lime Rock Park, Connecticut, where he's running an IMSA competition. He'll be running in the kart race, and ever since his victory at Riverside in the International Race of Champions, he has said that he's still looking for a home in 1989, but this hasn't been his day, despite the fact that he came off of a great victory at Lime Rock, and now comes here to Mid-Ohio and is just plain getting beat.
Yes, you can say Hans Stuck stands on the gas. Well, there's another young man. Oh, Chris Kneiffel's in the pits, and it looks like they're working on that windshield wiper or the hood. It's hard to say. They're busy. He's been in and out of the pit several times. It's a shame. He was doing so well early going back into the race.
Tough thing about most of these cars with all the fiberglass and fairings as we take a look again at Hans Stuck is the fact that most of the windshield wipers are recessed. So if there is a problem, short of taking the bonnet off the car, you've got to kind of stick your hands down in there and kind of work blindly. But nobody's had to work blindly or drive blindly behind the wheel of the number 14 today. And just watch the way he turns that car as he comes around that corner. He just lets it drift, and it almost looks as if he's running on the dry rather than the wet.
Yeah, he's doing a good job. Bonnet? Did you see bonnet?
Well, that's, you know, it's road racing, and even though once in a while I do tend to go stock car racing, I thought that might be a good word.
There we get a good look at second place. Talk about a guy standing on the gas and driving a car in the wet. He's done a good job today. Exceptional job today.
Jack Baldwin, no slouch when it comes to road racing. Moving into second, he started 4th, as we alluded to before, and doing a great job in the Peerless Corvette. And, you know, it's good to see the Corvettes be as competitive as they are. You know, that's almost been one of the super machines of America for so many years. And got a chance to take a look at the 19... Whoa! Yeah, that was close.
There's a little bump and run.
Bump and run.
Whoa! Over the inside curb.
Now, let me tell you one thing about Baldwin. He does not like that kind of racing.
No, and he'll be back.
He won't get mad. He'll get even. Yeah. He's being pursued, too, by 3rd place there, the 77 car, and that, of course, is R.K. Smith. So he's got no time to give back retribution to that lap car. He's got to get back in the throttle and try and hold on to this position. You know, he's running in second. He doesn't want to give it up with a miscue.
Casey Valet and that other car probably thinks World War III is erupting around him there.
Well, if he
quite a battle.
If he doesn't, when he gets back into the paddock area, he may find out that World War III is about to take place, knowing Jack Baldwin. But a good, tight battle beginning to develop. 4-second spot on the high side, and lap traffic's going to come into play.
Yes, there. Now that is racing. Wet or no, that is racing. And Baldwin just flat put the muscle on him and maneuvered right by there.
Sure that's not Dale Earnhardt driving that car? Looked like a move that you'd see at the Southern 500, but in Mid-Ohio, it's Jack Baldwin.
Baldwin was forced into the wrong position in the keyhole and had to pay for it with the other car coming around the outside. And then, of course, when he did get free and get going, bang, boy, he pulled out a lead.
And one of the reasons why...
Looky there. Now, that shows you how it is on that slick part. And it slides. He's going to hit the... he saved it. He was able to get down slow enough and get
Donald Sack, a good recovery and some good wherewithal on his part because he didn't get back in the throttle.
Right. Very, very slick.
As we look at Baldwin, we ought to allude to the fact, as we'll be coming back to the finish, that he's in a V8 and R.K. Smith is in a V6. That could account for the way he pulls away. But we'll be back for the checkered flag and see who will finish first, second, third, and the rest of the field right after this. Don't go away. Back at Mid-Ohio, we just had a spin, a 360 off into the mud, and that was Irv Hare. He's doing more than his share of agricultural racing today.
Yeah, he's surveyed a lot of real estate around here.
You know, the Oldsmobiles, though, have made a spirited run for the Manufacturers' Championship, and a lot of it has fallen on the shoulders of the likes of Irv Hare, and they've done a credible job, but it just doesn't seem to have worked that well for Chisuli or Hare today here.
Yes, Rudy Hare, Irv's dad, is an old racer from stock car racing and USAC from years back, has done a marvelous job in putting together that team.
But it is the Europeans' day thus far. The Germans carrying to the front here at the start of the flag, the drop of the flag. That's your first place car, and that was Stuck. And now second, a good old boy. And whoa, we've got a spin. That's third place.
Third place.
Smith doing a lolly loop down there.
Oh, he's going to try to keep it out of the sand trap that Newman made, and he, I believe he's got it saved if he can get the thing. Now, this is the hard part, because the harder you stand on the gas, there you can see the tires spin, and he's trying to go uphill a little bit. He can't get out of it, and the tires, oh, that's a shame. He's going to take a long time to get back.
If you looked up in a dictionary the word frustration, you could put R.K. Smith's picture right beside it today.
Right, that's it.
But that's a break for second place, Jack Baldwin, because he had his hands full as another car gets off into the mud, into the grass, and it's awfully slippery there. That's the tough part. And that is the 67 car, and that's Sack again. He's got a
psychological situation here, Jackie. It's coming down to the last few laps.
It is, in
and
fact,
the guys
the last lap
that are trying to make that little extra bit are trying to push harder to see if they can make up the spot. And here we have Hans Stuck on the white flag. One more lap. Doing a tremendous job.
Hans Stuck, who led literally from the first corner under green, comes to full song down into madness for the final time. He looks in his rearview mirror, and of course he does not see Jack Baldwin. R.K. Smith has finally got himself back out and comes out right in front of Hans Stuck. He was about to be lapped, but Stuck showed the wherewithal to get on the binders.
Oh, yes.
And he knows it's the last lap. He's out all by himself. A very commanding lead over Jack Baldwin as now they work through the turn, actually the turn 7, 8, and 9 area coming up to the Nissan Bridge. That'll take you through 9 into 10, 11, and 12. And Stuck really showed a lot of poise there as he came up into that real tough corner. It reminds me of Watkins Glen to a certain degree. The first corner where you're at full song and you've got to take that sweeping right-hander. Stuck, I think, if I was him, I'd be just content to follow Smith.
He's
checkered flag.
This is the mark of a pro, and plenty of experience there. He's going to sit back and not take a chance on getting up there and getting punted off the track at this point. He's going to come around very nearly to the checkered flag now, coming through the carousel, and going to be coming down, getting that coveted checkered flag for his fourth victory.
We've had 3 victories so far for Hans Stuck, and he now has officially scored his 4th. Hans Stuck is victorious in round number 10 of the Sports Car Club of America Escort Trans Am Championship as he continues what may be a run to his first Trans Am title. Meanwhile, for second position, here comes Jack Baldwin in his first start in Trans Am competition this year, and he will come across the stripe and he will score a